about it, I think it's something that everyone in our state needs to hear. Do you have a PowerPoint with this, or is it a talk?
I have a PowerPoint, so I would like
Okay.
to share.
Yeah. So Sam, can you let him do that? All right. You should be able to do that now. So I'll put myself on mute and let you talk. Thanks so much.
Okay, so just briefly before I start my slideshow, I will mention that I have a problem that I've run into, and I was really hoping that this problem would be resolved when I went to the New Mexico Autism Coalition, and I presented them with the fact that I was looking for employment. And I was very fortunate at that meeting to immediately have someone raise their hand and say, well, I'm hiring. And that led to my employment. I was super excited about having this new job. I've been working it since July. I've been really fortunate to be inserted into a workplace culture that really fits me very well. I've been doing very well at my job. I've been getting feedback from both the clients that I serve directly and from my coworkers that I'm doing an excellent job in helping everybody out. So there's a lot of positivity surrounding what I'm doing for myself right now. But I still managed to run myself into a little bit of a hitch. And so let me see if I can get my screen shared here. Can everybody see that? Great. So welcome to Scaling the Money Cliff, the cliff effect and how to surmount it. What is the cliff effect? The cliff effect occurs when assistance programs like child care subsidies and Medicaid remove benefits faster than people can earn enough income to replace them. It's a phenomenon where individuals lose eligibility for public assistance resulting from an increase in wages, even if the increase is not sufficient to cover basic needs. Oftentimes, a 10-cent wage increase leads to the loss of thousands of dollars worth of assistance. And if you guys have time, you might want to check out this video. It's a 45-minute talk from the Arvada Chamber of Commerce called Understanding the Cliff Effect. And it goes into more depth about what the cliff effect is and how it looks for individuals of differing incomes. But I'm going to present you with some hard evidence today that goes over exactly what my income looks like in a minute. However, I do want to just kind of visually illustrate what the cliff effect looks like, if I can. And so I have this chart that I pulled from the Center of Social Policy of University of Massachusetts, Boston. And it shows differing programs. Now, the programs that are available in Massachusetts are different from the programs here in New Mexico, but they all kind of, the intersection of the different programs is kind of illustrative of the same sort of effect. So you'll notice that there's a bunch of different types of assistance that are represented on this chart. One of the big one being value of health insurance. Down towards the lower end of the income bracket, you're looking at like your Medicaid. And towards the upper end of the bracket, you're looking at private health insurance. That's this yellow one here. Then you have programs like SNAP that taper off more gently as your income increases. And you have rental assistance programs, which have a sharp decline, but a gradual decline that are basically stay in line with a person's income up to a certain point. What happens with this is the benefits cliffs, as they're referred to, are these actual sharp drop-offs that happen at certain points. This black line is the child care voucher. And so you'll notice that if you are earning about $30,000 a year, that you get hit with both the at approximately the same time, a sharp drop off in the child care as well as a sharp drop off in the value of health insurance. And so these can hit at approximately the same time and hit extra hard for families that are relying on these government supports. So enter in the problem that I discovered. I did some budgeting and I found out that my expenditure outweighs my income. Now, I knew this and I expected this because this was part of the problem that I was trying to fix by getting myself a part-time job. I was, up until about half the year had passed, I had been working in a gig economy and earning income through freelancing. And I had been earning a very modest amount. About early July, I received that offer of employment and took the new job and started working my 20-hour work week. So at the end of 2023, I discovered that I spent more than I earned. And you can see the breakdown of exactly what my budget looks like. You'll notice that rent and utilities is at 11%. That's this orange wedge here. And by far the largest expenditure that I have was grocery expenditure at 32%. Watch those wedges and see what happens to them as we go into future projections for what my income could potentially look like if I were to increase my wages. But first, I just want to show you the breakdown on the side here. So we have the different calculations of what goes into my budget. We've got a subtotal of $14,082.75. Notice that that's being offset by SNAP credit, which is at currently $3,080 for the year. Now, that actually stepped down when I earned my, when I started working my job. I lost a section of the SNAP credit that I was allotted. So that's a cumulative total over the year, which represents earning a higher amount of SNAP credit at the beginning of the year and then earning a lower amount toward the end of the year. But what happens is it creates an assisted total of my realistic actual expenditure was $11,002.75. My income sat at $8,227.59. So you'll see that I have a deficit here of $2,775.16. It actually cost me almost $3,000 just to survive. So what does it look like for 2024? Well, unfortunately, I stand to lose even more because of the way that things are going to change. From living, one thing that's important to keep in mind is that in addition to earning SNAP benefits for my grocery money, I'm also on a income-based housing program. And that means that my rent is always going to be 30% of my earnings. But when it comes to expenditure, you'll notice that that this orange wedge has increased to 19% as a result of the fact that I will have been working this new job this entire year in 2024. My grocery expenditure increased slightly up to 33%, which is partially due to inflation and partially due to some changes in spending habits. And I also expect that I will have to spend some money on auto maintenance. There's some preventative maintenance that I'll be spending that's going to total up to $1,500 that I'll have to put into my car this year to keep it running at its best. So all in total, we're looking at a subtotal of $19,550 for 2024. My SNAP credit will have reduced to $2,520. And that gives me an assisted total of $17,636.05 in expenditure. Whereas my income, which seems like it would have covered what I was spending in 2023 at $14,035.84, because of the jump in primarily the rent going up in accordance with my increased income, I actually end up with a deficit of even greater loss of $3,600.21. So I'm actually earning more, but I'm also spending more. And at the end of the day, it's going to end up with costing me more than I earned. So what can be done about this? Well, one of these particular items on this list is discretionary funds. And it's important to understand that that's basically the only category of expenditure that I have direct control over. So let's break that down. My discretionary funds are $2,565. It encompasses things like apparel to make sure that I have the opportunity to buy some new clothes, things that are luxuries like dining out, entertainment, and of course, there's a budget for gifts to make sure that my son and other family members have something for their birthday, and so that we have a Christmas at the end of the year. There are a few other items on here as well, but it's important to take a look at the fact that even if I were to drop my discretionary funds down to absolute zero and just not spend anything that I have direct control over at all and have an entirely meager existence, I would still end up with a deficit of $1,035.21. So I would still be losing money. So what's the solution to this? Could I work some additional hours? Could I ask for a raise? Well, let's take a look at what that would look like. If I were to increase my workload to 25 hours a week and receive a 5% raise, then my rent would go up accordingly. And you notice that this jumps up to 31% of my expenditure now. Groceries trailing behind at 28%. My total expenditure, or the subtotal expenditure, is $22,812.50 at this level. I don't have an exact value for what my SNAP credit would be, so just for safety's sake, I dropped it down to zero. Because I can't count on exactly how much SNAP credit I would receive, but I know that it will be less than what I'm receiving now. My assisted total, therefore, is $23,519.69, whereas my income would increase only to $20,550 $475. So I'm still looking at a deficit of $3,044.69. You'll notice that as my income increases, my rent and utilities increase accordingly. And it's really becoming a much bigger slice of the pie. So what would it take to break even? Well, if I were to earn $24,883.12, then I would finally break even and I would no longer carry a negative balance. At this point, my rent and utilities would increase to 35% of my expenditure, groceries trailing behind at 27%. And the important piece here is that I have almost doubled my income from what it is currently in order to get to this point. And I have another graph that'll show that more in detail in just a moment. So at this point, it kind of begs the question, well, would the simplest solution be for me to just simply move from working part-time to moving to working full-time? And this is what that would look like. Working full-time hours, my rent and utilities increases to 39% of my expenditure. Groceries still holding in second at 25%. And I finally have a positive balance. My assisted total is $26,836.93. And of course, assisted is just a inserted there for consistency. But I'm really not receiving any SNAP assistance at all at this point. And of course, one of the big things is, yes, I'm carrying a positive balance at $4,363.07. I finally have a surplus, and I have something with which to budget. But I've also, at full-time hours, I've lost my Medicaid eligibility. And so I have to go on private insurance. And there will also going to be a couple of other financial hurdles to working full-time, which we'll look at in a moment. So how much of that do I actually get to keep? It's a good question. It's one that I don't have a direct answer for just yet. But let's take a look at the cliff effect visualized. This combines all of the data that I just showed you into one graph. You'll see that in 2023, I earned $8,227.59. This year, I stand to earn $14,035.84. As we step up further and further in the earnings, you'll notice that the deficit or surplus the needle only moves a slight amount, to the point where to take me from where I currently am to where I would need to break even would be a 77.28% increase. That's almost 80% of my income that I'd have to increase in order to break even. So what we're looking at is potentially working twice as hard, twice as long, and exerting twice as much energy just to get a little bit above the baseline. And this is really where it can start to feel like you're climbing a cliff to get over it. But if working full-time is the most obvious solution, then why don't I just simply choose to move to that? Well, I face a number of barriers to working full-time. And let's break some of those down. Financial barriers include the fact that I live on income-based housing, which de-incentivizes me to earn more because it causes my rent to go up so dramatically. The loss of government benefits, as we mentioned, I would almost certainly lose both SNAP and Medicaid, and I'd have to go on private health insurance. The switch to private health insurance is a little bit dodgy. I tried to look into it for the research for this presentation, and I didn't come to a very distinct conclusion. But for certain, I would have to not only pay additional premiums which don't amount to all that much. But then once we start looking at copays and deductibles, it starts to get really iffy depending on what my exact health needs are for a particular year. And I'd have to look into what services actually qualify under the new plan. So I don't have direct data to say exactly what it would cost me to switch to private health insurance, but I know that it's going to cost me something. In addition to that, I'm looking at increased student loan repayments. So I have about $100,000 in student loan debt. I have 2 years toward a 4-year degree that ended up costing me a whole lot more than I gained out of the situation. I ended up dropping out of school due to financial reasons because they changed the loan terms on me and said that I had to start paying back my loans before I was out of school yet, which I didn't have the ability to do. As a result of that, about $62,000 of that student loan debt is in private loans that went into default, and about $38,000 is in federal loans that are currently in an income-based repayment option. Because I'm on an income-based repayment option for those federal loans, and because I'm so low income, I actually have a $0 loan payment, which means I get credit for paying on those loans, even though I'm not actually paying anything. However, if my income increases, then so does the repayment on those loans. And in addition to that, if at some point I earn past a certain amount, and the loan servicer finds out about it, then I could end up, because I defaulted on my loans, have my wages garnished to help repay that debt. So that's a risk that I would have to be willing to face. In addition to this, working full-time would be extra strenuous on me. And it would increase the likelihood that I would be spending money on convenience food. I would be tired at the end of the day and probably not feel like cooking for myself quite so often. In addition, I would have to make additional requests for time off, which could cut into my earnings. Because I don't have an appointed free day for scheduling appointments, whenever certain opportunities come up where I would need to leave work for whatever reason, including things like medical appointments, I would have to specifically schedule time off for that. And while I would be earning some PTO, it's kind of up in the air as to whether I would be able to cover those appointments with my PTO, or if I'd have to schedule unpaid time off in addition to that. There are time barriers, such as less time for self-care, less time with family. Currently, I pick my son up from school almost every afternoon. And I wouldn't have the ability to do that anymore if I moved to full-time. I would therefore not have as many evenings where I get to spend with my son. And so that would be a consideration. I would be looking at some loss of services, which is kind of twofold. For one, I wouldn't have that extra day in the middle of the week where I could actually budget the time for the services that I receive, such as through balance. But in addition to that, I would also be switching from Medicaid to private health insurance, and who knows if those services would even be covered under the new plan. And as mentioned, I wouldn't have that free day for appointment scheduling, so that also presents a time barrier as well as a financial barrier. There are energetic barriers to working full-time, and that includes impact to sleep regulation. I'm a natural night owl, And what happens when my sleep schedule gets disrupted is I tend to gravitate more towards staying up later and later in the evenings. However, with the new full-time work schedule, I would likely have to start my day even earlier, which results in loss of sleep. And that would impact me energetically throughout the day. I'd also have impact from loss of services. As mentioned, I may not qualify for those services anymore, and I may not have the time to budget towards them. And so the help that I'm receiving now would no longer be available. And since I'd have to do more on my own, I would effectively have to exert more effort towards those activities that I'm currently receiving support for. All of this results in more stress in my stress bucket and an increased neural load. And I think that most of you are probably familiar with with the stress bucket model and what it means to have stress in your stress bucket. But I'm going to go over that in brief, just for anyone watching this that might not be as familiar. So I have a little chart here that I worked up called the Autism Stress Bucket model. And it shows basically that when stress comes in, it's like filling up your bucket. And that can come from multiple sources such as sensory inputs, environmental inputs, memory and cognition, executive functioning tasks, anxiety and impulsivity, hunger and nutrition. These are all things that impact a person throughout the day, and it all kind of dumps into one container. And if you aren't filtering out all of these stressors through coping skills or some other means, then you are at risk of this overflowing. And what happens when the stress bucket overflows? Well, for an autistic person such as myself, that can result in neurological meltdown. It can result in panic attacks. It can result in sensory intolerance, not being able to tolerate lights or sounds or smells. It can result in going nonverbal, which is also called aphasia. It can result in delayed cognition, something called exertional malaise, which basically means that as you exert energy, it makes you feel really awful just to make an effort at things. And it can result in brain fog. Now, coping skills work like a tap at the bottom of the bucket, and they help to relieve or filter out those stressors. But it's important to actually have the energy and focus available to utilize those coping skills throughout the day so that you can widen that tap and it can regulate the sensory stressors that are coming in. When the tap is narrowed due to things like an exceptionally high stress level or the inability to use those coping skills, then it can lead to bucket overflow. I want to talk a little bit about understanding neural load as well, which is another term that some people may not be familiar with. Neural load or cognitive load refers to the amount of mental effort or resources required to process and complete a task. It's like a measure of how much the brain has to work to get something done. Tasks that are more complex or require more attention to work or working memory, tend to have a higher neural load, meaning they require more mental effort and can be more challenging to complete. Example, riding a bike. Imagine you are learning to ride a bike for the first time. At first, it's a challenging task that requires a lot of focus and mental effort to balance, steer, and pedal all at once. This would be a high neural load task, but as you practice and get better, neural load decreases, and eventually you can ride a bike with less effort and do so more automatically. But of course, what if it never gets easier? What if it gets easier but never gets easy enough? With autism, individuals may experience higher neural load because their brains may process information differently or may have difficulty filtering out irrelevant information. This can make it more challenging to complete certain tasks, especially those that require a lot of mental effort or attention. So the basic rule of thumb here when it comes to managing one's stress bucket and managing one's neural load is that less is more. Less to think about leaves more room to get more done. And less mental clutter or a lightened neural load means more energy and focus is available for task management. I like to say that less time spent on activities of daily living, including performing work for your workplace, means more time available for fulfilling life choices, or the things that you would actually choose to do, which can include things like regulating one's self-care. So let's talk a little bit about how personally a full-time schedule may be unsustainable. The reality is I've been fired from 14 jobs for productivity concerns or the inability to keep up. I tend to have a breakdown, whether that's a neurological breakdown, what most people refer to as an autistic meltdown, whether that's a full-on nervous breakdown, which I had at the end of 2012, or whether that's a minor breakdown that involves like snapping at somebody at work. This tends to happen to me after about 6 to 9 months of full-time employment on average. When I was married, I was described as coming home and being like a zombie after work. And this is just a byproduct of having an increased neural load and having so much stress in my stress bucket that I have to take extra time to filter out after I'm done with work. And the reality is that I currently have no support figure to lean on when I come home. I'm divorced now, and so I don't have a support figure in my life who can help to sort of offset the residual effects of my increased neural load and increased stress bucket capacity when I'm incapable of managing my own self-care. So it may not be realistic for me to actually work a full-time schedule. That may just be something that's not in the cards. So let's look at a potential solution. I am a person with a disability status, and that affords me something called an ABLE account. And so basically my ABLE account is set up to collect contributions, which I can then use to possibly offset the cliff effect without being subject to some of the negative ramifications of increasing my income, as I will explain. But first, what is an ABLE account? ABLE is an acronym that stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience Account. ABLE accounts allow individuals with disabilities to save and invest money without losing eligibility for certain public benefits programs like Medicaid and SSI. Earnings in your ABLE account are not subject to federal income taxes, so long as you spend them on qualified disability expenses, such as food, clothing, personal care items, and other basic living expenses. Contributions can be accepted through a provided web portal, so friends, family, or anyone who wishes to invest in your future can do so safely and securely. This works very much like a tax-free GoFundMe campaign. So it would be a solution if I had enough friends and family to simply donate to my ABLE account to offset the earnings that I'm would otherwise earn. But the reality is I just don't have enough people who are able or willing to contribute to my ABLE account to simply go and ask for them to contribute. But let's take a look at the fact that an ABLE account works like a GoFundMe. So contributions to an ABLE account are direct, paid in full, secure, tax-free. Crucially, they're not claimed as income when determining eligibility for benefits. Via my ABLE account, $3,600 contributed to would eliminate my deficit, offsetting the cliff effect, versus an additional $11,000 of an increased wages that would be subject to the cliff effect. So again, I'll just review. Contributions are direct. There's no goal to be met, as you would have with, for example, like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign, other crowdfunding opportunities, where it would be a goal that you'd have to make before you actually get to claim the earnings. They're paid in full. There aren't any fees. So the ABLE account doesn't take away any charges on those contributions. What is contributed is exactly what the individual receives. You receive a secure website where you can make a safe transaction. And of course, it's tax-free for both the individual receiving the funds and for the individual who is giving the gift contribution. So you don't have to worry about the tax liability that you would have if you were to, for example, give thousands of dollars to a friend just as a gift and then have to pay taxes on that at the end of the year. Now, I'm not a tax professional, so I always advise that you consult a tax professional about how to actually claim those gifts at the end of the year. But I do understand that those gifts are tax-free. So this is what my actual ABLE account looks like. This is a screenshot of the payment portal that allows me to collect contributions. And you can see the actual URL here that anybody can type in and give to my ABLE account. But of course, it's very hard to convince people to just give to a situation where someone is asking without something in return. So I see this potentially as going two different ways. I'd like to leverage my ABLE account in such a way that I find additional work to volunteer my time toward in exchange for a gift to my ABLE account. In which case, I'd have to find something that would be some sort of cause that would allow me to deliver a service that's worth $300 a month. There'd have to be some level of fair and equitable exchange. And I'd be looking at an investment of only about 5 to 20 hours per month. Now, compare that with an additional 20 hours a week, and it's a much more minimal investment. So I'm really looking for something that I can invest myself towards, where I can say, hey, I will contribute and volunteer toward this cause. And in exchange, I will receive some level of contribution to my ABLE account. But what could that be? Well, a second option for what that might entail is we could host a fundraiser with a portion of proceeds donated directly to individuals in need. If we were to do that and raise anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000, we could make a big impact on a small number of individuals. Or we could also make a smaller impact on dozens of individuals, possibly even hundreds of individuals and families. So I'm going to explore for the rest of this presentation kind of what it would look like if we decided to launch a fundraiser to help individuals in need who have ABLE accounts. But where's the marketing push? How do we convince enough people to open their hearts and wallets? Well, This fundraiser would need to be broad reaching. We'd be looking at, rather than having, 5 or 6 individuals each donating $600 or $700 a piece, we would want to have 360 people donating $10 a piece, or maybe even 3,600 people each donating $1. It needs to be repeatable. We're looking at some sort of an annual benefit drive versus a one-off event. It needs to be engaging, give them a reason to give. It needs to be rewarding, where they get something back when they give. And of course, it needs to be bigger than just me. One individual being served is great, but I really envision this as something that could be bigger than just myself, because I know that this is a problem that is being faced by not just one person, but millions of people out there in America who are currently anywhere in that bracket of earning, like me, $14,000 a year to earning $30,000 a year or even more, are being affected by the cliff effect. So if we were to host a fundraiser, and we'd want to create a program of mutual aid for individuals with autism or other invisible disabilities. We'd want to create a program for people with able accounts to help them cover the basic cost of living. We'd want to create a program that serves individuals who are seeking services who've lost insurance coverage due to the cliff effect. Or those individuals who are unable to work a 40-hour work week due to disability status or extenuating circumstances. Now, we could pick one of these, or better yet, we could design a program that benefits all of the above. Now, my vision for this fundraiser would be to create a program that donates a percentage of its proceeds in various tiers. So tier 1 would be, just for example's sake, it could be direct contributions to individuals with able accounts in a bracket of, say, collecting up to $5,000. Tier 2 would be scholarships for services rendered by a partnered business in a bracket between $5,000 and $10,000 donated. Tier 3 would be donation to a charitable organization. And I'm just throwing out there that it could be, for example, like the New Mexico Autism Society. And that would be if we collected $10,000 or more. Now, we could tweak the percentage yield to each tier to do the most good with whatever we collect. And that could be look like, for example, 67% goes to tier 1 and 16.5% goes to tier 2 and 3, up to $5,000. And then we change the percentage at the next dollar mark of 5,000 to 10,000, etc. Some kind of dollar matching might really drive participation up. So if we had, for example, a business that was willing to donate $1 for every $1 matched by the company for every $1 that's donated by individuals, then that could really drive participation up. The question, though, that I haven't quite figured out is, what would this fundraiser actually look like? What motivates people most to give? Suggestions that I've had thrown out include things like we could hold a raffle, we could host a dinner party, we could host a silent auction, some sort of a gala, a conference with a panel of speakers. I've seen programs that do walkathons or dance-a-thons that offer some sort of unique experience. And of course, there's crowdfunding as an option with various perks at different tiers. This is something that we would need to explore if we decided to seriously talk about hosting a fundraiser for those in need. But in conclusion, the cliff effect causes sudden drops called benefit cliffs, in bottom line spending power for low income employees as their gross earnings increase. I would need to increase my income by nearly 80% just to break even, or I can convince one or more parties to contribute to my ABLE account. A fundraiser is one possible solution, but it would need to be broad-reaching, repeatable, engaging, rewarding, and bigger than just me. We could help more people out by stacking benefits in tiers, distributing dollars where they'll do the most good. And that's where I will open up to the floor for questions. So that's my presentation.
That was wonderful. I saw some applause there. I think that's really good information. It sounds like it's such a difficult spot for you to be in, and I think that that's something that is probably, I'm guessing a lot of adults are probably in a similar situation to you. It just seems like such a quandary.
I feel like a lot of people are in this similar boat. They may
Mhm.
not even realize it because they may not have reason to actually crunch the numbers and look at their budget so closely. I feel very fortunate that I'm in a position where I have had to live on such meager earnings and make it work for so long that I've gotten into the habit of really tightly examining my finances for every little nuance and possibility of, saving money where I can. And I'm really quite fortunate that I do have a little bit of a savings to live off of. So this isn't like an immediate concern that I have to fix within the span of this year. But if the trend continues, then it's going to look pretty dire here, in 2025 or beyond. So I'm really looking at, figuring out some sort of solution that's going to add some level of continuity to my existence. And obviously, I've hit kind of a bottom line where I can only crunch, I can only pinch pennies so far.
Oh, for sure. Well, I was when you had those graphs up with your budget for the year, I was looking at that, and it's like your shortfall. There's no real easy place to cut back on anything. I mean, you could stop getting haircuts, but but even that, and then you'd look terrible. Like your haircut looks good now, but if you stop getting haircuts, you'd look terrible. But then even that wouldn't fix it, you know?
Right.
It's it's just a systemic problem, and I think it's really important and eye-opening, and it's good information for everyone to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did anyone have any questions?
I just really appreciate the information about the ABLE accounts because I'd heard of them, but I hadn't really known much about them. So I think that was a really cool idea. And I think the kind of call to action is really good because it's like, yeah, so what are we gonna do? And I think it's getting the right people and saying you can help a lot of people and it probably wouldn't be that difficult. It's just getting the right people on board. So I think you're really on
Absolutely.
something.
Is the Able account pretty easy to sign up for?
Yeah. It basically is a process where all you have to do is fill out a single form online and declare that you are a person with a disability. You don't have to go through a process where you're vetted or you have to prove your disability. It's just they basically say that you are required to keep documentation on hand that has proof of disability in case you get audited. So it is good for you to have some sort of a letter or in my case, I have my neuropsychological report results.
Mhm.
But some sort of documentation on hand is good to keep in the event that you get audited.
No, I think that it's good that it's easy to sign up for, but that there are still some restrictions. That's the kind of thing I wish was around. It had been around longer. I'm surprised that more places hadn't thought of that. What it reminds me of, this is sort of off topic, but kind of on topic. There are so many income restrictions for people's benefits. And one of the first adults I ever worked with, he went to a casino one weekend with like $2, and he put like his $2 in the slot machine and ended up winning $30,000.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. But then we had to figure out how to get him to get rid of all that money before the end of the month so he could maintain those benefits that he had.
Right.
Such a dilemma. It's such a dilemma. It's like you can't spend too much, you can't make too much. He ended up he has like a very nice burial plan. He had like probably the fanciest headstone in the entire county. Yeah, were there any other questions? Did anyone else have anything?
I was curious if you knew if an employer could put money into an ABLES account.
Well, there's two different ways that you can add money to an ABLE account. One is through there's this thing called Able to Work, which is basically you can set up your employer to do a direct deposit into your ABLE account for the earnings that you earn from them. And in that circumstance, there are some restrictions on it. You cannot be a participant in a 401k or other type of retirement plan. So that's another thing that I would be looking at if I were to go to full time, is a 401k is offered through my workplace, and I'd have to look at whether I would be wanting to participate in the 401k and therefore be automatically enrolled in that, or if I would want to specifically deny my opportunity to participate in the 401k so that I could continue to hold my ABLE account and have my funds go into that. The other is just through a standard contribution. And a standard contribution, anyone can just go on that website that I showed you, and you can just make a standard contribution. And I've had work arrangements where I did work in exchange for someone to make a standard contribution to my ABLE account. And that's usually something for like if I do a freelance gig and it's just a small amount of income that I'm receiving at a time, then it's just easiest to have them make a standard contribution. Essentially, I'm doing the work for free and they're gifting me that money.
Yeah.
And that's the way that we've arranged it a time or two in the past with a few small projects that I've worked.
Cool. Thank you.
Does it make your taxes more difficult?
Not that I've experienced so far. You do get a tax document at the end of the year, or rather at the beginning of the following year. You get a tax document that describes what you have in your ABLE account, but you really there's something like a limit of $100,000 in your ABLE account that you can collect before you have to start paying taxes on the overage, what goes over $100,000. And so I haven't even come close to getting to that level yet.
Well, that's cool though. I like that it's pretty simple on the taxes, and it's not like there's a bunch of different forms and receipts that you have to keep or anything like that for
Right.
that. That's cool. That's good. Well, it looks like we just have a couple minutes left. Did anyone else have any last minute questions before we wrap up? All right. Thank you again, Jeremy, for doing this. I really appreciate it. We did record the session. Do you want us to send a copy of the recording so you can review it later, or if we
Yes,
can get
please.
that? All right. So Sam, we'll figure out a way to do that. Thank you to everyone for